as Job describes humanity, now as we go into verses 3 and 4, he declares the futility of his own life. And look how he compares these things. It's very interesting. He says in verse 3, so am I allotted months of vanity? Now remember, he's thinking of the slave and he's thinking of the hired worker here. And there's something that you have to remember. You have to remember that Job was a property owner. Okay? He was the big kahuna, like they say. He was the big guy in town. He was the prince. Well, when you read a little bit of history and you read about, the Near East and Israel, and you understand some of this history, you understand that sometimes a property owner, for whatever calamity that came upon his life, would lose the things that he had and would have to become a hired man. And instead of having his stuff and people working for him, he was now the guy that would have to go and swallow his pride and be humble and be humiliated in many cases and go work. And what Job is saying, he's like, that's happened to me. I'm like the hired man. But I'm working for months and months, and it's all vanity. And what vanity means here is futility. This is the word that describes his entire mindset that Job is having. And he says, I do it all, and what do I get? At least a hired man gets his wages. I get nothing but vanity. So you see how he is now declaring the own futility of his own life. I often say, I tell my wife this all the time, people often speak in extremes. One little thing happens and the sky is falling. That's what I mean. It's these extremes, One person doesn't like you, everybody hates me. One person laughed at you, they all laughed at me. We say these extreme things. It's like a default reaction a lot of times, it feels. And there's something like that happening here with Job. Job is seeing everybody else, and they're having pretty hard times. You got slaves over here, and all they get is the rest at night. And you got the hired man over here, and all he gets is his wages. But at least he gets his wages, and at least the slave gets his rest. But I don't even get wages. I get vanity, futility, destruction, nothing. This is Job's new perspective. Do you see it developing? And do you see it in your life develop often? When you're suffering and you're going through pain and your family member's sick and your mom is sick and your dad is sick and your kids are out there doing great, and you see yourself, the whole world, it looks happy to you. Everybody looks okay, but God has it with me. He's magnifying me. All his wrath is going on me. And when we do that, we cancel out, to a degree, in some sense, we cancel out the grace that God provides for you to get through that. That's the promise, is that he'll give you strength, is that he will help you through it. Well, look what he says here. So am I allotted months of vanity. This is his contrast to the hired man. And then he says, and nights of trouble are appointed to me. He says, maybe I don't get my wages, but if I was like the slave, at least I would get my rest at night. But he says here in the bottom half of verse 3, and nights of trouble are appointed to me. My nights are trouble. Then he starts to describe that and declare that. Look what he says. He says, when I lie down, I say to myself, when shall I arise? And that's the idea behind say. It's kind of like a thought, right? Like you're thinking to yourself. And he says, I say, when shall I arise? When will things get better? And I lie there, but I've done that. Who's done that? You lie there in bed and you just think and think and think, and you're just getting beat up by life. And he's saying, I don't even get rest. Look how he describes it. He says, but the night continues and I am continually tossing until dawn. Job gets no rest. He works for nothing. That's his days. He's like the hired man. He worked all day, but now he gets no wages. So he's like, well, at least I get to rest. And then he stays up all night. The pain in his body, the concern for his wife that abandoned him, the thought of his children dead, everything that he had gone. His friends not being good comforters. He argued all day with them. Now he tries to sleep and he can't. This is the pain that he's going through. And he builds this painful perspective. He said, well, this is it. This is what the world is like. And he tosses and he turns all night.